Hi and welcome to Drummers Review. I'm Nolly and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a comparison of 3 different single ply coated snare heads. Specifically we're going to be looking at the classic Remo Ambassador, the latest offering from Evans, the UV1, and a newcomer on the scene which is the Code DNA. Since the advent of modern drum heads, the 10mm thick single ply coated drum head has been more or less the standard. So what we're looking for here is a nice bright sound. We're expecting quite a lot of overtones because this is an unmuffled single ply head, but we don't want them to be too obtrusive, and we're looking for a great deal of articulation and clarity. Our test snare today is Yamaha Recording Custom Brass. It's a 14 by 5.5 inch, and to us this is quite a lively snare drum, so we think it's a really good choice to bring out those overtones and make sure that you can really hear the difference between the different heads. In terms of price, we've got quite a spread here, with the Code DNA coming in cheapest at around £9. The Remo Ambassador is around £15, and the Evans UV1 is £18 RRP. So let's hear how these heads perform in a couple of different tuning ranges in more detail, and come back for a bit more discussion afterwards. Unboxing these three heads, we certainly weren't very surprised about anything about Remo Ambassador. It has to be one of the most recognizable snare head designs of all time. The Evans UV1 was interesting in that the coating seems to be limited to only the flat part of the head, with some of the translucent natural part of the head visible around the collar. Picking up the code DNA, we were surprised at how heavy it was, which must be due to the fact that there is a steel reinforcement within the aluminium hoop. Holding them by the collar and tapping them, it was noticeable that the fundamental tone was almost exactly the same between the three, which I guess you'd expect from such a similar construction. The coating on the Remo does seem to be the most coarse of the three, and very quickly you start to see stick marks appearing on there once you start using it. Cranked up, the Remo performed excellently, with that overtone staying present and not choking in the way that you might expect with a thicker drumhead. The sound in that upper range is clear and defined and projects really nicely. With it being such a newcomer to the market, we didn't know what to expect with the code head, but I was very pleasantly reassured once I started tuning it, because of the three, this one tuned up most easily, and I'm wondering if that's got something to do with the extra reinforced hoop. Sonically, the code was very much in the same ballpark as the Remo, perhaps a little bit more overtone focused and bright, but actually a little bit drier in the center too, or perhaps a bit shorter overall. For me, these characteristics are actually really desirable, and especially in the lower range, I like the fact it was a little bit more attenuated, and the slightly shorter voice made it seem a little bit more articulate too. In the high tuning, the code was probably the driest out of the three and was pretty ferocious. It's a great aggressive sound that would suit drummers that want a good pop out of their snare. Something nice about the code too is that the coating doesn't seem to show stick marks at all really. Even after some pretty heavy playing, the head still looks more or less mint. If anything, the Evans actually left us a little bit disappointed, to be honest. When trying to tune it up, we found that it was very difficult to get it perfectly in tune, and despite really tearing my hair out over it, there always seemed to be this slightly clashing overtone that just couldn't be dialed out. We can't help wondering if it was something to do with the fact that that central coated area was not completely central on the head, which is visible once it's mounted. Perhaps we just don't have the best example of one here, but we have to review what we've been sent, and unfortunately that's just the way it was this time. Tuning niggles aside, we actually feel like there's a great character there in the UV1. It's a bit darker and smoother sounding, fatter in the low end, and definitely the driest out of the three. When cranked up, this fatter sound definitely works in its favor, enabling you to retain a bit more body despite the high tuning. A UV-treated coating process is the new technology that Evans are unleashing with this UV1 head, and certainly it's the smoothest out of these three that we have here. Similarly to the Code 2, it seems very resilient with no stick marks showing up, even despite some fairly heavy playing. Durability is one of the key characteristics that Evans is pushing with their UV coating technology, and certainly our experience so far is congruent with that. However, they've certainly got a strong contender here in the Code, which seems to be built to last as well. Comparing all three heads and taking price into consideration too, it seems to us that the Code might be coming out on top here. It's got a great sound, it feels great to play on, and importantly at £9 a head, it's significantly cheaper than the other two. The Evans UV1 definitely showed loads of promise, but it's just a shame that this particular example seemed to suffer from tuning inconsistency and the slight misplacement of the coating section on the head, especially disappointing at £18. The Remo Ambassador, of course, is always a safe choice. With such a tried and tested history, you know you're always going to get an iconic sound. We really hope you've enjoyed this snarehead comparison. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more of the same in the future, and we'll see you next time at Drummers Review.